Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio. I've got a fascinating individual, an author, to introduce you to today. Catherine Bush is her name. She's the author of 5 novels, including the widely acclaimed Blaze Island and the Rules of Engagement, a New York Times notable book. Her books have been shortlisted for the Trillium Prize, the City of Toronto Book Award, and Books in Canada First Novel Award. She's been the recipient of numerous fellowships. She was a 2024 Writer in Residence, and she's got a book right now that sounds kind of interesting. It is a collection of short stories, and it's called Skin. What's
Thank
Skin about? That
you.
sounds kind of provocative.
It does. I like a title that's a little bit provocative. We all have skin and we've all got skin in the game of life. So it's a pretty binding attribute. And the stories are all about um, intimacies of various kind and places where people can touch each other or can't touch each other, the way we're porous to each other. In the opening story, Benevolence, a 30-something performance artist who's working as a substitute teacher, thinking that she's being kind and altruistic, invites a high school student into the spare room in her apartment with results. But I think what happens will also be unanticipated for the reader, which is what I want. There's another story, the title story, Skin, in which a woman becomes obsessed with washing the feet of strangers, particularly refugees who are new arrivals in Canada, and offering them an unusual intimacy at a time when they may not be touched. And touch is so important to us in our lives. It really makes us healthy and allows us to connect with others. And someone told me a strange story about their mother once, and I decided to make it into a fiction and make it my own by making it into a fiction.
I'll read two of the comments about the book, if I could. Skin dives under the surface of relationships, revealing hidden streams of desire, longing, pain, and deliverance. It's in successive stories that are penetrating and absorbing. Catherine Bush also explores how we are deepening our love affair in this time of climate storms and glacier melt with a more than human world. Deftly woven through the thematic tapestry of surfaces and skin, these stories are memorable, riveting, and seismic. Catherine Bush pens tender anthems of verboten intimacy and familiar survival, earth and flesh, and glacial being. What's verboten intimacy?
Um, well, literally forbidden intimacy. So there are, as I said, unusual encounters in this novel, and I want to take the reader to the edge of something that might feel dangerous, but also is just unexpected and unpredictable. And in terms of story, take a reader to a place they don't expect to go. That's what a good story should do. But in some of the stories later in the collection, as noted, I move towards these unusual intimacies with the natural world.
You've got one where a man falls in love with the wind? Really?
Yes, yes. Well, you know what I wanted to do, and I know in Southern Ontario, we just had another one of those crazy big windstorms that came through with a weather shift and knocked down trees and knocked out power. And what I did was took a series of real weather events, wind events from 21 and 22, and put them in a story. And I didn't want to write about conventional despair about our changing climate, but look at someone who became really fascinated by these extreme winds and follows them. But he's not a conventional storm chaser either, and he's trying to figure out the nature of his fascination. It's a way of paying attention to something that we all need to pay attention to. And it was actually weirdly a lot of fun to write about extreme weather events.
Do you have the book handy? Is
I
it
do.
is it something you could read from? Maybe we could take a break for some messages and come back, and maybe you could read from one of your short stories about skin. I think that would be fascinating for everyone to get a sense of how you write and what your stories are about. We're going to take a break,
Okay.
everyone, and we're going to come back in just 2 minutes. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio. I've got Catherine Bush with us tonight. She is a novelist. She's written 5 books. You're at some event right now to celebrate short stories. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm here in Ottawa. I'm from Toronto for the Ottawa International Writers Festival, and it is Short Story Month. And so I'm doing an event with two other short story writers, Andre Alexis and Bill Gaston, tomorrow night, celebrating the short story.
What is the future of short stories? Is that popular? I think that I've always, wanted to buy novels or nonfiction books. I can't remember the last time I bought a book of short stories.
Yeah, I mean, some people say the story is less popular than novels, and novels give you a sense to really, sink into them, which is wonderful in a time of short attention spans. But we live in a time of short attention spans, and stories speak to that. And some of the stories in this collection are super short. They're just 2 pages long, and some are longer, like novellas. And I think the whole creates a journey, almost novelistic from beginning to end. So stories can be something for everyone, I think.
This book that you've just recently released, which is a collection of short stories, is titled Skin. And let me read, if I could, a description of it. Ranging from the realistic to the speculative, the stories of Skin tackle the condition of our restless, unruly world amidst the tumult of viruses, climate change, and ecological crisis, bringing to life unusual and perplexing intimacies. A man falls in love with the wind. A substitute teacher's behavior with a student brings unforeseen risk. A woman becomes fixated on offering foot washes to strangers. Bold, vital, and unmistakably of the moment, Skin gives a changed and animating voice to the question of how we face the world and how, in this process, we discover tenderness and allow ourselves to be transformed. Sounds fascinating. You've got the book handy. Can you read something from it for us?
Yeah, I'm going to read from one of the longer stories, which is called Derecho. And if you don't know what derecho is, it's a wind formation. It's straight rather than twirling in circles like a tornado. And it comes right towards us across the continent. And there was a big derecho in southern Ontario in 22. And I put that in a story. So this is just a sense of some of the wind in this story. The narrator's name is Hugh, and he's interacting with his wife, Paula. He knocked on Paula's study door. When he touched her bare shoulder, she turned from the screen and its rows of numbers, dazzled but smiling. He was going out to pick some gravel to finish the backyard work, he told her, then planned to meet a friend, Mike, the guy he sometimes played tennis with, for coffee. You got that alert, didn't you? Paula asked. It's just an alert, Hugh said, restlessness rippling through him. He assured her if the wind got up, he'd shelter, kissed her, as responsive as ever to the give of her lips, disturbed by how easy it was to lie to her. Then he was driving north up the parkway, east out of the city, recklessly burning gasoline. It wasn't that he hoped to outpace the storm, only that he didn't want to encounter it in the vast suburban hinterlands or while pelting along 12 lanes of mega highway. At the Newcastle exit, he pulled off the 401 and drove south towards Lakeshore Road, where, as he hoped, he came upon an unobstructed view of the lake across fields, and there was almost no traffic. He sped some kilometers farther east, aware in the rearview mirror of the sky darkening behind him, before he made a sharp U-turn. The clouds, mass, particles, whirl, velocity, tumultuous, gargantuan, slate dark, steroidal. This was what was coming towards them. So
You
just
know,
a
I
little
I've
sneak.
got a house on the ocean, and I love going out on the screened-in veranda. So I'm a little bit covered, but being out there in the elements when there's a storm coming, it really is. It's exhilarating.
Yeah, so I wanted to capture some of that exhilaration. And, it takes my character Hugh to some unexpected places, let's say.
But he has to lie to his wife about it and where he's going.
He
Or she knows.
does. It's kind of like he's having an affair with the wind, and that's what she accuses him of. Are you having an affair? So there are all these ripples through their relationship, and yeah, I like to push people in my stories into more extreme situations. You've mentioned the glacier story too, which is based on an episode in my own life when I was on an artist residency up north off the coast of Svalbard, which is way above the Arctic Circle. And I got shut in a cabin, which is the only way I could be on my own, locked in from the outside, which was, really intense. And then something happens to the character in the story that did not happen to me. after she drinks a bit of hot sauce, actually, in the very far north. But you'll have to read the story to find out what happens to her.
How'd you become a novelist?
I always wanted to write from the time that I was, a kid, really. I was one of those kids that was always scribbling. And then I started out, like many writers, writing short stories. And then I wrote a story, and an instructor said to me, he held it up in front of me and said, "This isn't a story." And what I realized quickly is that it wanted to be a novel. So I wrote that novel, and then another one, and another one. And then during the pandemic, I was really exhausted, like many people, and started writing stories again for pleasure because I could create these, more intense, more compressed worlds. And I just rediscovered my love of writing short stories. And, they resulted in this book. And it's wonderful to be able to present a range of worlds to readers. And I've had so far various people who said to me that one of the stories brought them to tears, which is amazing. But interestingly, each time it's been a different story. So I love that people respond so differently to different stories in the collection.
You've got several stories in this book called Skin. I guess what is it? Skin that connects them all. What's the
Yeah,
connection between all of the stories?
yeah, I would say skin, touch, how we touch each other. There's a story, the International Headache Conference, where two characters again kind of have an affair, but they're linked through their intense experience of pain and trying to touch each other in a way that recognizes the other's pain. There's another story that rewrites Cyrano de Bergerac, and in that, the characters can't touch or don't touch. So skin can be the line that binds us and separates us. And so the stories play with that divide in all sorts of ways.
Yeah, I've interviewed someone recently that said that we don't have intimacy in today's world, even though with porn on internet and with dating apps on social media, it's easy to have sex, but we don't have intimacy anymore. What do you think of that? Do you agree?
I think that that's true. We set up all these barricades, and screen is certainly one. And, as a writer, I want to get people even imaginatively back into their bodies and, really reaching out and trying to touch people. And because I think intimacy is crucial for feeling and being alive. And we do need to get away from our screens and in front of each other. And I think what a story can do is it can give us that imaginative opportunity. And I guess you could read it on screen, but you have to really feel it through your body, through your emotions. And I want people to go there. I want people to go on a transformative journey. Um, and yeah, fiction ultimately makes us feel more alive, I believe.
You wrote an article called "No Woman is an Island." Then along came COVID. What do you think is happening? Are we becoming less connected?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote that during COVID when we really did feel islanded, but I do think that our life on screen has only continued. And sometimes, I ask my students this puzzling question. I say, well, what do you need if you want to, you know, go on a VR adventure, or what do you need to do that? And they start talking about equipment and stuff that you need. And I say, okay, further back, what do you need? And eventually I get them to say, well, you need air to breathe and water to drink, because otherwise you'd be dead. And so really take them back to those essential things that we need to be alive in the world. And so, in a sense, fiction can do that too. Take us back to the elemental places, bring us to our bodies, make us pay attention to glaciers, trees, winds, animals. There's dogs and birds in this collection, intense relationships with both and with other people. And I believe we really need those intimate bonds with others. And they may not look like what we expect them to. That's another thing I try and explore. In the mother in the title story, Skin, washing people's feet, her kids think it's really weird, but it also is transformative, for one of the refugees whose feet she washes. I mean, he's changed in that moment by this unexpected touch. And I think we just don't know where intimacy is going to find us, but we need to be open to it.
I was at a speech by someone who said that we've lost the the opportunity to develop empathy in our society that is fixated on short snippets of TV sitcoms and or even movies. And he was saying that the only way you actually unless you go out and travel around the world and live in other people's lives, that you really develop empathy is through books, because through books you for 300 pages or however long, you delve into someone else's life and you really try to understand it, and better with the written word than on the screen, because you got to think through what they look like, and what the environment is, and stuff like that, versus sort of being obviously confronted with it through the visualization of the director and the cinematographer if it's a movie. What do you think? Is reading novels a way of developing empathy?
Yeah, I do fundamentally believe it. I also believe it of reading short stories too, but there have genuinely been studies that say it's reading fiction rather than reading nonfiction that develops people's qualities of empathy. Because in fiction, you're really being invited to step into another person's life, into their mind, how they see the world, how they interact with others. And the great thing about reading fiction in a book form and not on the screen, that you can do that too, and I do that too, and also I listen to audiobooks, is that you get immersed in a way that it's hard to be on screen, but that it's vitally that invitation to live as someone else and see and feel the world as someone who isn't you, and just really step inside their body. I mean, it's shown through studies to be a deeply powerful and transformative experience for people. And reading stories can be fun. We've been doing it since we were sitting around caves in front of, fires. And it's a deeply human thing to tell someone a story and listen to stories. And stories can be engrossing in all sorts of ways. We want to know what happens next. And we also, I think, take pleasure in finding out about other people, and stories do that for us.
If people want to check out Skin or some of your other books, what's the best way to do that? Where is it available, or where can you check Catherine Bush out?
Yeah, I mean, you should be able to find Skin in most bookstores now. It's brand new. And if you don't see it at your local bookstore, ask for it because they can order it. It's published by Goose Lane Editions. And also your library. Check it out from your library. And if they don't have it, ask for it because then libraries will order it also. You can find it and more about me online. I have a website, catherinebush.com, Catherine with a C. I'm always happy to hear from readers. Love to do book clubs. So, yeah, please do.
Catherine, if a young lady came to you and said they wanted to be an author, and said, "Can you make money? Can you make a living out of it? Should I do it?" What would you tell her?
I would say, don't do it because you're, trying to make a bundle of money out of it. If you're lucky, maybe, something you write will do incredibly well. I teach creative writing at the University of Guelph. I've been there for a number of years, and I love teaching younger writers. But you have to do it because you love it as a way of living your life and paying attention to the world. And if you want to get stories out to the world, there are all sorts of ways online, as well as through traditional book publishing. But I would just say, can't, keep doing it. And the advice I got when I was a young writer is some that I've really kept to heart, which was, keep writing. If you can stop writing, stop. If you can't, keep going until you can't do anything else.
Catherine Bush, thanks so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. I look forward to reading the book Skin. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. It's been a pleasure to be with you today.
We're going to take a break and come back with another author in just 2 minutes. Stay with us, everybody.